Start, right?
Yes.
Okay. Roll. Hello and welcome to the 8th edition of e-dialogue series organized by Urban Update and All India Institute of Local Self-Government. Today we are focusing on a topic which requires a serious attention. There is flood, there is thirst. The entire water management is in crisis. We have seen there was a famous reportage from celebrated author, novelist Farishwar Nath Renu titled Rinjal Thanjal. सूखा भी है और बाढ़ भी है, दोनों एक साथ है और एक ही जगह पे है. प्रकृति हमें अपॉर्चुनिटी देती है जो नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज हैं उनको ऑर्गेनाइज करने के लिए, उनको उनके बेहतर इस्तेमाल करने के लिए. लेकिन हम कहाँ फॉल्टर करते हैं? वी हैव सीन इट across the globe, and there is a report from the Global Water Institute that predicts by 2030. Are we ready to really comprehend the intensity of the problems that poor water management will bring with itself? We saw it in South Africa, where cities went completely dry for weeks altogether. The similar situation is quite similar in India. We have heard from Niti Aayog that year after year, we see the similar situation across the country. There are people who have to travel kilometers to access water, and there are people who are submerged in water. Still, there is absolutely no solution. Where is the crisis? Is it a crisis of policy, or is it a crisis of implementation? Joining me today is a fantastic panel of water right activists who have worked in the field for decades. Mr. Ranjan Panda, who is the convener of Combat Climate Change Network, also known as Waterman of Odisha, and has done wonderful work uh, in the field of water.
Thank you, Ranjan.
Joining me is Swami Shivanand ji, हरिद्वार से. आप पिछले कई दशकों से गंगा संरक्षण, गंगा को बचाने के लिए काम कर रहे हैं. आप प्रेसिडेंट हैं मातृ सदन के, और पिछले कई दशकों से आपने इस फील्ड में काम किया है, सिर्फ गंगा संरक्षण के लिए नहीं बल्कि एज अ वाटर राइट एक्टिविस्ट एज वेल. V.R. Raman, he is a system and policy expert with around 3 decades of experience in the development sector. He is head of policy portfolio at WaterAid India. And also Ms. Amla Ruya, she is founder of Akar Charitable Trust and water activist. She has done wonderful work in the field of water harvesting.
नमस्कार, धन्यवाद.
Namaskar. Before I go to my panelists, those who are participant on Zoom, you can ask your question directly to the panelist once we have finished the question round session. Those, we are streaming it live on our Facebook as well. Go to your Facebook page and just type Urban Update MAG, Urban Update MAG, and you can watch it live on your Facebook page. Okay, so let me first give the first word to Ranjan Panda. Ranjan, you have been an activist working in the field of water. Where is the crisis? As I said in my opening comment, that there is flood, there is thirst. Is it a crisis of policy or is it a crisis of implementation? Where do you place exactly the water management problem in the country?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dhananjay. Good morning to all. It's really wonderful to be with all of you today. I think if I go back to the background that you had put in for this webinar, we can trace the crisis there. What has now happened is, for example, people like me, many of the water researchers, activists, and grassroots workers, they have been actually sounding an alarm bell on water challenges that the country is facing and already going to face, at least as far as I know, since almost for 3 decades, people like me have been telling. And and the threat of climate change has also been looming as we studied in early 90s. I think just to be very specific on the question you have asked, there are two issues, both at the policy front as well as our programs front. We have basically not been as proactive, as visionary as we should have in this nation and almost everywhere in the world. The crisis actually, if we go back to what you said, in fact, millions of people are going to face water scarcity due to, sort of displacement and other issues, needs to be understood in perspective. What has happened, for example, if we take the World Water Development Report and all the reports that we have also worked earlier in the Planning Commission, while shaping of the 12th five-plan commission report, plans, we have we have been actually struggling through the mathematics on what essentially is a basic water requirement. So it comes to somewhere around 50 liters. This can be controversial. We have different opinions. Even I have my own opinion. But then overall, if you consider the UN World Development Report, then they say it is 50 liters per day per capita is an essential need. What now you see in pandemics like COVID, almost these needs in a way doubles off. So we really have messed up with that. We still have not provided, billions of people with that basic water, because globally, if you look, and within India also, I think WaterAid only has come up with a very latest report saying at least 7% of people in India do not have the basic, water requirement they have. So that is one aspect of the policy. We have concentrated much, but then we have also failed in that. There are 2-3 regions. One is we shouted about climate change. We kept on talking about climate change, but we never did that. We never responded to that properly. Statistically, if you look, you know, we have created an entire bunch of climate migrants uh, because of uh, because of this kind of disasters that come off with our mismanagement of the resources, natural resources, as you say. So, so we can say from this that expected somewhere around 200 million people will be displaced uh, from their lands due to climate induced slow onset disasters like drought, crop failure, sea level rise. So all this, as why I would like to bring this is, all this is because of the failure of an integrated approach that we could not take on water resources management. We have always considered water sectors in silos. Like there are several statistics that have now come up, but it's but I'm not very surprised that there are also statistics not at this global scale in early 90s as well, in early 2000 as well. But then we never responded to that in a way. So what has now happened is we have ended up in a situation where we actually have a very stark division between the water haves and the have-nots, and that has been actually very uh, sort of pathetically uh, starkly come out during this COVID. So you see, experts say, yeah,
Yeah, Ranjan, hold on to your thoughts.
yeah,
Rightly
yeah,
said, have nots, those who have access to water and those who do not have.
yeah, yeah.
स्वामी जी, ये बात हो रही है कि क्या पानी नहीं है या उसका मैनेजमेंट सही नहीं है। आप गंगा संरक्षण के लिए, गंगा को बचाने के लिए इतने दशकों से आप संघर्ष में रहे हैं, आप वाटर राइट एक्टिविस्ट भी हैं। कहाँ समस्या है? क्यों कुछ लोगों को पानी मिलता है, कुछ को नहीं मिलता है? दिक्कत कहाँ है? स्वामी जी, क्या आपको मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
He's on mute. That is why he cannot hear.
You need to unmute first.
Swami, hello.
So
you may be able to unmute.
I'm calling him and fixing the thing. He's just muted. That's why.
Okay. Meanwhile, let me go to Raman. Raman, have-nots, have and have-nots.
Mhm.
Where is the problem? What your study says that how do we manage the water crisis in the country?
Thank you, Dhananjay. It's a very pertinent question. And water being a shared resource, I think the understanding about water itself. So I was listening to a bunch of experts some days back, wherein the Uttar Pradesh state government was trying to formulate their water policy after around 23 years or so. In late 90s, they prepared their water policy, and they thought it is time to revise it now. So I was sitting as part of a group of experts, and we were discussing about various issues of water. So one of the things that strikingly came out there, which is having very important connotation to what you have asked, is that we don't know much about our water. So this itself will answer. Is it a problem of policy? Is it a problem of implementation? It is a mix of things. So we are in a mixed syndrome. I would like to call it like that. So it's a syndrome in that sense. So we don't really know what the vulnerability is around water. So one thing is that the policymakers always thought that they can control this resource. That is one issue. and people were using it. They were only seeing themselves as a user, so they were not fully coming into. Exceptions are there wherever water activists sitting around in this session, and also several other people who would have initiated community-based initiatives for preserving and conserving and saving water. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about people in general. So in that people in general context, the issue is that they were taught to be users of water, and they were given a false conception that, or a misconception that this is going to be an endless resource. Despite we know the distribution of water, where it where is it available, where is it potable or agricultural usable, that kind of water is available. So despite all that, we never taught the users of the water, the broad users, the population, to understand the vulnerabilities around water.
Correct.
So this vulnerability is quite important as far as I understand. So how can we do that is a question. And second question is, again, I'm going back to one other discussion that I had a couple of years before in the Water Resources Ministry. So in the Water Resources Ministry, one of the issue that we came across was that, who are the guardians of water? So we looked at, while, states were making the plans for water conservation, how many departments are having some or the other role to do with water, whether it is agriculture, whether it is food production, whether it is water resources or water supply department themselves, whether it is health, whether it is various other kind of departments. So there was a bunch of departments who had one or the other, minor or major kind of roles in managing water. But this is not fully understood. So we don't have example. Again, another example is the recent bulletin of the Water Resources, the Central Water Commission, wherein it is very clearly saying that we have a surplus water this year. 167% of water is available in our reservoirs. And I was reading through various media reports about this specific 167% of additional 67% additional resources compared to the last year or last 10 years. That is how they analyze it, and they're saying that there is surplus. But that surplus, what does it indicate? Some of them were celebrating it, but for me, in July, we are entering into July. This report is of 9th July. And the date of the report, the data collection could be somewhere in June. So in June, while the monsoon is on our gate, if we have 67% of surplus in our reservoirs, that definitely is indicating towards a disaster, as Ranjan started to indicate. So understanding the gateways of disaster is not done, but it is celebrated as we have additional resources, which is, those kinds of things are there at the policy level. At the implementation level, we had a campaign called Jal Shakti Abhiyan last year. This year, because of the corona crisis, that campaign has not happened. But if you see that water conservation, had become a agenda there. But in operationalizing the water conservation program across districts, this has become competitions between districts rather than actually understanding what could be done at that particular point in time. So there are a lot of issues which is mixed in between policy implementation and also at the user level. That is how I would like to put it in that perspective. Thank you.
Well said. स्वामी जी, आपको मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
नहीं, अब नहीं आ रही।
स्वामी जी, आवाज आ रही है आपको?
हाँ, आ रही।
अरे स्वामी जी, अभी तक जो हमारे पिछले दो पैनलिस्ट ने कहा है, आप गंगा संरक्षण की लड़ाई में दशकों से आप लगे हुए हैं, पानी वाटर राइट एक्टिविस्ट हैं आप। बात क्या आ रही है कि कमी क्या पानी की है या कमी पॉलिसी की है? आप कहाँ देखते हैं?
अभी तो कुछ सालों से मानसून ठीक है, तो पानी की कमी तो है नहीं। पॉलिसी हमारी कमी हमारी पॉलिसी की है क्या कि प्रकृति जब अपने स्वरूप में रहती है तो उसका मैनेजमेंट ठीक चलता है। उसमें जब मनुष्य का हस्तक्षेप होता है तो तकराहट होती है, और तकराहट का परिणाम हम लोग भुगत रहे हैं। आप कह रहे हैं गंगा का उदाहरण लीजिए, किसी भी नदी का ये नियम है कि अपने उद्गम स्थान से लय स्थान तक अबाध गति से बहे। हम शास्त्रीय प्रमाण भी देखते हैं कि मोदी जी जब 2018 में पृथ्वी दिवस पर अथर्ववेद के भूमि सूक्त का उदाहरण देते हैं, तो उसी सूक्त में ये भी आया है, यस्यामापः परचरा समानी रहोरात्रं और प्रमादम छरंती शानो भूमि भूरधारा पयो दुहा मथो उक्षत वर्षता। ऋषि कहते हैं कि हम कहाँ वास करें, यहाँ के लोग यस्यामापः परचरा समानी, जहाँ जो बारिश की पानी होती है उसको चारों बगल चलने के लिए स्वतंत्र हो और उसे रोका न जाए, वो अप्रमादम बिना व्यवधान का रात दिन चलता रहे, वही उसी जगह पर हम अपने अमृत तत्व वर्चस्व को पा सकते हैं। यह ऋग्वेद का मंत्र है क्या? आज विज्ञान की जो स्थिति हो गई है और इन तथा कथित जो नौकरशाह हैं, वह जिस हिसाब से सब चीज को अपने अधीन करके पूरे सिस्टम को अधीन करने लगते हैं, उसका परिणाम ये हो रहा है। अब उदाहरण देखिए, एक ऋषि मत होता है जो सर्वांगीण सर्व समय में सही है, उसके बाद किसी चीज के अध्ययन के लिए वैज्ञानिक पद्धति होनी चाहिए, फिर टेक्नीशियन अपना काम करे तब उसका उपयोग करे। आज कुछ टेक्नीशियन हैं, हमें डैम बनाना है, सांस्कृतिक पहलू का तो ख्याल नहीं किया जाएगा, वो तो इन लोगों की कुछ चीज ही नहीं है। वैज्ञानिक पहलू का भी अध्ययन नहीं होता है, और डैम बनाने से जल जीव पर क्या असर पड़ेगा, प्रकृति पर क्या असर पड़ेगा, इन्वायरमेंट पर क्या असर पड़ेगा, क्लाइमेट चेंज में क्या प्रभाव होगा, इसका तो अध्ययन होता ही नहीं है। और बनाने के बाद जो प्रभाव हो रहा है उसका भी अध्ययन हो नहीं रहा है। और टेक्नीशियन आते हैं, उनकी बुद्धि केवल उतना पर ही रहते हैं कि हमें ये करना है, और वो कर देते हैं। तो प्रत्येक चीज, प्रत्येक का जो परिणाम होता है उसका कुछ कारण होता है। वह कारण अद्भुत में भी होता है, अधिदेव में भी होता है, अध्यात्म में भी होता है। आजकल का तथाकथित विज्ञान में ही विश्वास करने वाले लोग केवल उसी पहलू को देखते हैं, अधिदेव और अध्यात्म तो भूल जाते हैं, लेकिन अद्भुत के भी सब सिद्धांतों का पालन नहीं करते हैं, उसका ये दुष्परिणाम है। प्रकृति को आप देखिए, उदाहरण के लिए गंगा है, गंगा नदी के को जल को हरिद्वार में भी 96% कैनल में डाल दिया गया। 4% जल जो यहां से जाता है उसमें हरिद्वार का समस्त सीवेज मिला दिया गया। जो गंगा किनारे हम लोग रह करके स्वतः पानी पीते थे, हमें याद है कि 1986 तक हरिद्वार में लोग सीधा गंगा का जल पीते थे। तो जो इतना, और वह बहुत ही साधारण जल से बहुत ही बढ़िया था। तो जो हमारा प्रकृति हमें जो दिया हुआ है उसे हम दूषित कर दे रहे हैं, और इधर वाटर मैनेजमेंट करेंगे, वाटर का कहेंगे कि हमको बहुत इस साल बहुत पानी हो गया, बहुत ये हो गया, हम ये करते हैं। तो इस ढंग की जो भावना भी लोग फैला दिए हैं, इसका ये परिणाम हुआ है और होगा। इतना ही नहीं, आप एक बात देख लीजिए, हम मनुष्य हैं, तो मनुष्य होकर के हमारा अपना कुछ अधिकार क्षेत्र है, उसके अधिकार क्षेत्र के हम बाहर नहीं जा सकते। प्रकृति का भी अपना एक अधिकार क्षेत्र है। तो जब मनुष्य और प्रकृति दोनों जी सामंजस्यता में चलेगा तो सब कुछ ठीक होगा। अभी मनुष्य प्रकृति के समस्त जो सिद्धांत है उसका उल्लंघन करता है। इतना ही नहीं, जो पर्यावरण पर काम करने वाले व्यक्ति हैं, जैसे आपके पैनल में भी हैं और भी लोग काम कर रहे हैं। आजकल पहले क्या होता था, यदि कोई सेमिनार होता था या कोई वैज्ञानिकों का या बुद्धिजीवियों का चिंतन होता था तो सरकार उस पर ध्यान देती थी। वहां वैज्ञानिकों ने ये बात कहा, उसका हम अपने इसके द्वारा अध्ययन करवाता था। आज हम लोग कितना डिस्कशन कर लें, सरकार को इससे कोई मतलब नहीं, कितना बुद्धिजीवी वहां जमा हुए, इस ढंग की चर्चाएं की, उसका हम इम्प्लीमेंटेशन करें। उनके जो अपना कुछ खरीदे हुए, मैं दावे के साथ कहता हूं, खरीदे हुए वैज्ञानिक हैं, वह सरकार जैसा कहती है कि इस ढंग का रिपोर्ट होना चाहिए, उस ढंग का रिपोर्ट हो जाता है। मैं छोटा सा एक उदाहरण बताऊं। IIT भारतवर्ष में सबसे श्रेष्ठतम संस्था है टेक्नीशियन का। इससे पहले की सरकार ने 7 IITiयों को लेकर के गंगा पर 7 करोड़ रुपया उसमें खर्चा हुआ। उस रिपोर्ट को न मानेंगे, इसके लिए तुरंत उसको साइड ट्रैक करके 2-4 अपने खरीदे हुए वैज्ञानिक को लगा दिए और वो जो रिपोर्ट दे दिया अपने हिसाब से चला दिए। तो जब इस ढंग का मैनेजमेंट होगा, वह मैनेजमेंट कुछ स्वार्थी पॉलिटिशियन के इशारे पर काम करेगा, तो एक से एक अन्याय होगा, प्रकृति भी कुपित होगी और मानव भी उसका परिणाम भुगतेगा। तो इस तरह से आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है? हमारी आवाज आ रही
जी,
है?
मानव भी उसका भुगतान भरेगा। आप हमारे साथ बने रहिए, हम आपके पास वापस आएंगे फिर से। मिस अमला, you have worked at the ground level in the organization in the field of water harvesting. What Swamiji has said are pretty strong words.
Correct.
Do you concur with that view, or you see a different point of spectrum?
While I concur with what he is saying, I would like to add that the situation is so grim and the suffering to mankind is so much that we need to attend it on all sides by being aware and conscious of the very difficult situation that surface and groundwater is going through. So at every level, we have to be aware. The reason it's not that the rains have increased or decreased, there have been certain policy decisions which have gone against us, which is not allowing the water to penetrate inside the bowels of the earth. And that the main cause for that is when the soil becomes too dry and it is exposed to the scorching heat of the sun because of having cut down the forest, or people having cut away the trees even in their own fields, what has happened is that the earth is not able to soak the water, and the water just goes on the surface of the earth because there is no matter in the soil, which prevents the soil from soaking in the water. That is why our underground aquifers have become empty and dry. So most of the water is consumed by the agricultural activities. At least 60 to 70% of the water is consumed by the agricultural activity. Now over there, the making of these large check dams has not been a very good decision. As Swamiji said, कि गंगा का पानी वहां पर रोक देने से गंगा नदी के पानी को कितना बड़ा नुकसान हो गया, वो हम लोग आम आदमी जान सकता है। ब्यूरोक्रेट के लेवल पर वो उसको पहचान ही नहीं पाएंगे कि पानी के अंदर किस तरह के चेंजेस हो गए हैं। तो मैंने अपने काम के द्वारा ये देखा है कि जब हम छोटे छोटे चेक डैम्स बनाते हैं तो वहां के लोगों की जरूरतें भी पूरी हो जाती हैं, कोई तरह का नुकसान, डिस्प्लेसमेंट नहीं होता है। एक एक चेक डैम जिसमें कि करीब 10 लाख रुपया लगता है, उससे मतलब जो उनकी आमदनी है वो 2 लाख से 2 करोड़ पहले साल में हो जाती है, और 3-4 साल के बाद वो आमदनी उनकी 7 से 8 करोड़ पूरे गांव की सम्मिलित नेट इनकम की मैं बात कर रही हूँ, इतना बड़ा बदलाव होता है। तो कहने का मतलब है कि इस समय जो सरकार की पॉलिसी है पेड़ों को लेकर के, उसमें जहां तक मेरी समझ है, मैं ये जानती हूं कि अब शायद सरकार इस बारे में चेत गई है और उसने ये डिसीजन लिया है कि किसानों को हॉर्टिकल्चर के लिए एनकरेज करना चाहिए, जिससे कि पेड़ों की जड़ों के माध्यम से पानी ट्रिकल डाउन हो करके नीचे के अंडरग्राउंड रिवर्स और एक्विफर्स तक पहुंचे। उससे 2-3 फायदे होंगे। एक तो धरती की नमी बढ़ेगी, दूसरा, हमारे कुओं में हमेशा पानी रहेगा और सॉइल का जो स्ट्रक्चर है वो बेहतर होएगा। तो हमको जो हमारी जो नदियां हैं उनकी धाराएं गर्मी में देखो तो 25% ऑफ व्हाट दे वर 40 इयर्स अगो, उतना सा जल उनके अंदर गर्मियों में रहता है। तो 40-50 साल पहले जो कि 75% मोर रहता था, वो सब किस लिए खत्म हुआ है? वो पेड़ों के कट जाने की वजह से धरती के अंदर जाता नहीं है, क्योंकि असल में जो नदियां हैं वो स्वस्थ और सुरक्षित रहती हैं जब उनके किनारों पर बड़े बड़े जंगल कायम हो। अभी हम लोग अगर बड़े बड़े जंगल लगाएंगे तो सरकार की तरफ से जो भी मूवमेंट होएगा उसके अंदर वो एनर्जी नहीं आ सकती जब तक कि वो एक सार्वजनिक और जन समूह का मूवमेंट नहीं बन जाता, तब तक ये समस्या हासिल नहीं, सॉल्व नहीं हो सकती। इस समय अगर कोविड की सडनली ये बीमारी नहीं अपने देश में फैली हुई होती, तब हम लोग बहुत जोर से ये वाटर प्रॉब्लम को एड्रेस करते। लेकिन अब सबका ध्यान छिन्न भिन्न हो गया है, इसलिए मुझे मालूम नहीं है कि इस साल हम लोगों को पानी को लेकर के क्या क्या झेलना पड़ेगा। वो अब हम लोग आने वाले 2-1 महीनों में हम लोग को मालूम पड़ेगा कि कितना तबाही, जो कि असल में अमृत तत्व है, वो कैसे हम लोगों ने अपने गलत तौर तरीकों से उसको तबाही के कगार पर ला करके खड़ा कर दिया है।
बिल्कुल रंजन, तबाही के कगार पर लाकर खड़ा कर दिया है हमने चीजों को। जल, जंगल, जमीन, ये 3 चीजें कही जाती हैं जो इस देश के हिंटरलैंड में बहुत ज्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट होता है। जो सरकार की नीति के बारे में अमला बात कर रही थी या बाकी आप लोगों ने बात किया, ये पॉलिसी में हम इन 3 चीजों का ख्याल कहाँ मिस कर रहे हैं?
As I told you from the beginning, I think we have moved water as a separate compartment from nature from the very beginning, and that is one fundamental flaw that our water policies have done. The second fundamental flaw that our policies, our thinking has actually done, that already Swamiji and others have said, is that we have decided to colonize water in a way to enhance our food production. What we have done through large dams is we have tried to colonize water, and gradually what has happened in India is the entire concentration actually on water has moved towards an engineer managed and concrete infrastructure centric water development perspective. That has violated a very fundamental principle of water as a resource and integrated with nature. How? Because you see, in Indian kind of an system with all its geo-ecological regions, we have our dependence for all the peninsular and other rivers and basins. I think I'm getting some distraction somewhere. Somebody can please mute the mic if if not talking. See the problem is we have not understood the phenomenon of monsoon properly. We have understood it, we have read it in our poems, our mythology. We have actually been very good at all that. But as Swamiji has very rightly pointed out, we have forgotten the science, the very basic science of water in India. That is monsoon, and monsoon drives the water resources. Monsoon drives our economy in a large way, and the very fundamental principle of that is, as everybody has worked in our lifetime, is you have to catch water where it falls, because you have a very defined monsoon season in India, majority of Indian, Indian geography. And what we have done is we have actually thought that large dams will store all the water for us. And in that process, the entire knowledge of traditional, engineering, traditional wisdom on water management has not been promoted in India the way it should have been. And as a result, the new generation in India, and even some of the generations from our age, they have actually got into the perspective that water is something, as somebody said, the rivers are canals, they are pipelines. You can twist them, you can turn them, you can do whatever you like. You store wherever you want water without really taking care of the integration into the natural resources. So in that, what has happened? You have destroyed the forests. You have come up with urban designs that are actually that have not been suitable for groundwater recharge, and you have actually gone into food production systems that are water intensive and actually not water sensitive. So kind of various these factors, both in policy and in practice, have now, as I told you from the beginning, have actually made a very stark division between us. There is one urban area, there is one society that actually is water have. Our entire concentration is on that 40 liter or 50 liter. So as long as you have provided that, the idea is then you can destroy the resource. Then your vision cannot, there is no point of thinking about, climate change. Like for example, over the last 2-3 decades, the extreme precipitation events have increased. Monsoon has been severely disturbed, and things are going to be very, very scary in future. By the end of the century, the government, very recent report only has said that we may go up to a 2.7 degree increase in our temperature. And our, the majority of rainfall now falls with, 80 to 90% of rainfall actually falls within a very short span of time. So unless you actually have policies that encourage, naturally integrated water harvesting systems in whichever way, as Madam says, through, agroecology or through your, natural biodiversity rich forest conservation, or through green and blue, planning in your urban spaces, like, kind of all these have to be integrated now. If we actually want to see that water is properly harvested, stored, conserved, and we are also able to, manage all our needs. And saying that, I have another point to add. We have, from the beginning, I want to tell that our policies have concentrated on human beings. And that is where we have fundamentally flawed, our water resources management. I think all the other species, the biodiversity that water supports and in return enriches, in return that also enriches the water, has not been actually taken care of in our planning as such. So the forest department is something else. As I think Raman was also saying, the water department is somewhere else. There is absolutely, the agriculture department has its own plans. The engineers are building dams. They don't care about, how much forest has actually gone and how much methane emissions have actually increased due to all the forests that have submerged in their dams. So it's almost like 4% if globally, if you see, only based on a 28,000 large dam study. And in India also, like I have studied the Hirakud reservoir, and it's a huge change in the local monsoon patterns due to that reservoir, because it has submerged a huge part of, tropical forest. So kind of all these things, I would say this is high time. The government recognizes the threat is no more a debate. I think what is now going to be done on that, because population increase cannot be just the one thing that you say the population is increasing. No, the other population is decreasing. You have already extinguished a lot of, almost 60 to 70% of all the other, species that actually enrich your biodiversity and in return your water. So it's not just only planting trees, eucalyptus or some alien species. It is about preserving biodiversity. It's about an ecosystem approach to water resource management. So I think,
Right.
I think these are some of the issues we need to debate. and we need to be very seriously, thinking about.
Yes, sure. Raman, where you have studied urban areas, you have studied rural areas. What are the situation similar because of the policy, lack of policy, or we need to formulate policy differently for both the sectors?
Yeah. Thanks. It's an important question, and I'll start with this, very pertinent urban questions, because if you see the urban-rural divide in water, I think that is something that we need to really understand. While the rural areas are comparatively resource-rich in terms of water, uh, most of the water that is supposed to be, or could be used by the rural area, it has been spatially transferred to the urban area. So rather than making the urban area self-sufficient in terms of water, our policies were always been depending upon transporting surface water to the urban area, which is actually while running water at home is very important for various requirements, but this running water, where does it come from? That understanding, missing of that understanding is a major issue. I'm talking about the urban elite now. I'll come to the urban poor, which is another dilemma that we are. So even in urban, we need to talk about the urban rich and the urban middle class, and also the urban poor as a separate kind of issue. So the urban segment, it is actually missing a lot of policy impetus there. So one, what is happening with our lakes, what is happening with our ponds, what is happening with our wells in the urban areas, and what kind of conservation measures and budgeting measures that we are doing with the urban community. The urban community is having a false impression. I'm talking about, again, the rich and middle class community at the urban level, who is having the access to the running water. So they are not really bothered about where the source is and how to preserve and conserve the source. What are the support, things that they are supposed to do. So that is one issue at the urban level. So even if you look at the Jal Shakti Abhiyan, I was talking about it before. If you look at the urban penetration of that program, you will see that in urban areas it was almost nil. And the Jal Shakti Abhiyan, so water conservation becoming a major responsibility of the rural population is a paradox, and also the reality of our policies. The second is about measuring water. Recently, I was, we studied 6 small and medium towns. In the urban segment, whatever we are talking about the large cities. We are not considering this emerging town areas. In census, we find every 10 years that some of the rural areas are graduating into urban areas. So we call them census towns, and those census towns in a point in time, they will become urban area committees or those kinds of things, and then they gradually go into a town municipal, that, and then becomes become corporation. So in this journey, what all are the things that they are wrongly inheriting in terms of water conservation is something. So one of the examples I can tell about one of the towns in UP. 69% of the urban that town population is relying on the bore wells, and the kind of pumping that they are doing in that area using submersible pumps was something, the striking kind of understanding that we have. So in this process, we need to also understand that in the planning of this emerging town, if we can actually look at water conservation for maybe 50 years after, or that kind of a long-term vision and a medium-term vision and a short-term vision. If we have all that, and then we try to fulfill all that, probably in those areas, in all these emerging towns, one of the striking thing was that all the water bodies, the public water bodies in those areas were extremely polluted, or they were diminishing, or the areas were encroached. So those kinds of things were very clearly visible. Chennai, the large city now, the last year, the flooding has given us a very interesting and important lesson that the ponds and the lakes in the city, diminishing of that, encroachments of that, building, urban concrete houses around or, above them. has created a lot of chaos, for. So these emerging towns, the small and medium towns, has a potential about understanding this. And also the civilization, earlier it used to be around rivers, but it is now, around industry. So that change of it also is creating a lot of challenges for the small and medium towns. So that segment I would talk about. And then finally about the rural area, this rural urban divide I discussed about. In the rural area, we actually, the water stressed areas, whether we are focusing them, if you look at our water policies, there is no water budgeting that is happening. What kind of water we would require for various purposes and how to distribute that, and whether there is a deficit. If there is a deficit, what people can do about it, what local bodies can do about it, what district administration can do about it, what kind of efforts are needed, what is the timeline that is needed. That kind of a thinking needs to be introduced. Jal Shakti Abhiyan in that sense is a good thought, but how much it has been translated into this kind of a thinking is very important. So for example, in UP, when we started something called the Jal Chaupal initiative, Ranjan is aware about it. So people started to talk about it, what is the kind of vulnerability around water. Then they went into what is the gender impact of water. Then they went into water budgeting at the rural level. Then they went into planning, and then they got the elected people representative, local governments and district governments all together to allocate or find resources from existing schemes to do things for that. And in some of the villages that resulted in a very positive way, that they were able to understand the water issues and then try to kind of find solutions for that. Coming to the urban poor, which is more important, the urban poor, when it comes to the urban poor, they are serving the society. I agree with what Ranjan told about the human-centric approach to water has created some of the issues. But on the other hand, within the human-centric approach, what we miss is the equitable approach, even within the human-centric approach. So that equitable approach, we are totally forgetting the service providers of the urban area. The service providers of the urban areas, settled in informal settlements or slums or whatever, there actually has to, almost riot every day for getting even the basic share of their water. So if you have seen the photographs of people crowded around. Recently, my colleague Nirma wrote an article, and also I co-wrote an article about the issues of urban slums. So in that, we have looked at the specific issue of how we need to look at water as a very basic right for the urban poor. So within the human rights approach, human-centric approach, also some of the critical human beings are left out. So these are, some of the critical things that we need to
Right,
look
Raman.
at.
Right, Raman. Let me take this to Swamiji. Swamiji.
हाँ हाँ सुन रहे हैं.
हाँ हाँ, मैं यही आपसे पूछ रहा था. बार बार इस बात का जिक्र हो रहा है, डैम्स बनाने में किन चीज़ों को ख्याल में नहीं रखा जाता है. वो आते हैं, अपना काम करके चले जाते हैं, और लॉन्ग टर्म में वो कितना डैमेज करता है. आपने इतने सालों से देखा है, गंगा में भी डैम्स बनते रहे हैं, ऋषिकेश से लेके हरिद्वार तक और सब जगह. कितनी बड़ी समस्या है ये बड़े डैम्स बनाना.
सबसे बड़ी बात जो है, वो जो कह रही थी, ठीक ही कह रही थी कि छोटे छोटे डैम से उपयोग करे तो उन्नत होगा. बड़े डैम में होता क्या है, यहाँ सबसे बड़ा ये है कि बड़ा कॉर्पोरेट रहता है, समस्त नेताओं का पेट भरता है. और जहाँ तक प्रकृति का दोहन का सवाल है, जल की गुणवत्ता तो नष्ट हो जाती है. जैसे आप छोटी सी बात देख लीजिए, टिहरी डैम से ही बैक्टीरियोफाज जो है वो 90% रह जाता है. जो बैक्टीरियोफाज के बारे में वैज्ञानिक एक से रिसर्च करके ये कहते हैं कि अनेक पैथोजेनिक बैक्टीरिया को नष्ट करने की सामर्थ्य रखता है. अभी तो ये भी लोग चर्चा करने लगे हैं कि कोरोना को भी शुद्ध करने की सामर्थ्य आएगा. लेकिन जल रहेगा तब ना कोई टेस्ट करेगा. तो एक तो जल की गुणवत्ता को नष्ट कर दिए. दूसरा नष्ट ये हो जाता है कि नदी के किनारे जो प्लांट्स होते हैं, वो प्लांट्स की अपनी एक क्षमता होती है, उस नदी के अनुसार विकसित हुआ रहता है. वह प्लांट्स उस जल को भी सोखता है और उसके साथ साथ वहाँ का इन्वायरमेंट, वहाँ के क्लाइमेट को भी दुरुस्त रखता है. उसे नष्ट कर दिया गया. जैसे हम हरिद्वार का ही उदाहरण ले रहे हैं या उत्तराखंड के उदाहरण ले लीजिए. जब से ये डैम बना तब से बादल फटने की जो क्रिया हो गई वो इतनी ज्यादा हुई कि ये मत पूछिए। लेकिन इस साल देखिए, इस साल डैम रहते हुए भी डैम प्रभावी नहीं है, क्योंकि उसके जल को छोड़ना पड़ रहा है। इसलिए एक भी अभी तक उत्तराखंड में बादल फटने की घटना नहीं हुई है। लेकिन गत वर्ष तक का आप रिकॉर्ड लिख दीजिए कि शायद ही सप्ताह में 2-3 दिन होता होगा जो बादल न फटता हो और गांव का गांव तबाह न होता हो। यह तो प्रत्यक्ष देखा जा रहा है। इस साल बादल फटने की अभी तक उत्तराखंड में एक भी घटना नहीं हुई है। क्यों? क्योंकि डैम रहते हुए डैम अप्रभावी है, क्योंकि डैम पूरा प्रोडक्शन कोविड के चलते नहीं दे पाया। तो एक तो देख रहे हैं कि जहां हम हैं वहां कितनी बड़ी आपदा दे रहे हैं, और ये वैज्ञानिक लोग इस पर अध्ययन भी नहीं करते हैं कि क्या कारण है। जब टिहरी डैम नहीं था, अन्य डैम नहीं था, तो इससे पहले बादल फटने का रेयर घटनाएं होती थी। लेकिन अब क्या कारण है कितना डैम में इतना ये हो रहा है, तो ये अध्ययन नहीं किया जाता है। जल की गुणवत्ता गई, प्रकृति गया, ये तो हम लोग देख रहे हैं। इतने और भी बहुत सूक्ष्म कारण होंगे जो हमारी सीमित बुद्धि उसे नहीं देख पा रही है। तो इसलिए डैम का जो, क्योंकि प्रकृति का जो स्वभाव है उस स्वभाव के साथ छेड़खानी नहीं होनी चाहिए। निश्चित बात है, प्रकृति से लोग उतना ही आवश्यक चीजें जितना कि प्रकृति स्वतः उसे पूर्ति कर दे, ये प्रकृति का नियम है। और यदि इस ढंग की बात होगी तो प्रकृति सुख रहेगी, शांत रहेगी, मानव भी ये रहेगा। तो डैम बनाने का दुष्प्रभाव, एक में अभी भी आप लोग वैज्ञानिक लोग हैं और मैं चैलेंज करता हूं कि बताइए क्या कारण था कि गत वर्ष की मैं बात बताता हूं कि सप्ताह में 2-3 बादल फटता ही था, गांव का गांव बर्बाद होता था। और डैम बनने के पूर्व का रिकॉर्ड ले लीजिए कि कितने बादल फटने घटनाएं घटी, और डैम बनने के बाद देख लीजिए कितनी बादल घटनाएं घट रही हैं। इसका कुछ तो प्रभाव होगा। तो आप इस पर क्यों नहीं अध्ययन करते हैं, जो एकाएक डैम बनाते चले जाते हैं। सबसे बड़ी बात यह है कि वो अभी हम आप लोग देखे होंगे, हमको उठना पड़ा है। उठना क्यों पड़ा है, जिस पर मैं बात नहीं करना चाहता था। कि एक तो हुआ कि इन लोगों का मैनेजमेंट, दूसरा सबसे बड़ी बात है कि जो वोकल रूप में उतरेंगे उनको मार ही दो। आप लोग को पता होगा इस साल पद्मावती के साथ जो घटनाएं घटी हैं, आज पद्मावती की हालत ये है कि पद्मावती अपने से ठीक से चल नहीं पा रही है। इसका हमने पद्मावती ने पत्र लिखा था फरवरी में कि हम हमारे जान पर खतरा है। उसका जांच का ये आया है कि पद्मावती को कि तुम आकर के देहात में बयान दो, चल नहीं पा रही है। तो ये सिस्टम है। उत्तराखंड छोटा सा राज्य, तो जो आवाज उठावे उसको नष्ट कर दो, हमें जो इच्छा होगा वही करेंगे। इतना ही नहीं, अभी कोविड-19 है, लॉकडाउन का पीरियड था, प्राइम मिनिस्टर के यहां से लिखित में आ गया था कि यहां का खनन बंद रहेगा, और उसको इस कोविड पीरियड में त्रिवेंद्र सिंह रावत ने शेखावत जी से मिल करके प्राइम मिनिस्टर के आदेश को नल एंड वॉइड किया और करा करके जो भीषण उपद्रव मचाया समझ।
स्वामी जी उस पे हम विस्तार से फिर चर्चा करेंगे।
मैं ज्यादा नहीं कहना चाहता हूँ, क्योंकि मैं नहीं चाहता कि आप लोगों को कोई परेशानी हो, मैं वो नहीं देना चाहता।
कोई परेशानी की बात नहीं है उसमें।
परेशानी को मैं स्वयं लेकर के झेलूंगा। लेकिन चूंकि अभी ये बात हो गई तो इस ढंग का हम कोविड के चलते अपने तपस्या का विराम दिए, और सरकार ने जो प्राइम मिनिस्टर स्वीकार किया था लिखे, मौखिक को तो पहले खा गए, जो लिखित में स्वीकार किए थे उसका उल्लंघन। तो इस ढंग का मैनेजमेंट में क्या होगा।
बिल्कुल सही बात है आपकी, मैनेजमेंट का एक क्राइसिस है। मिस अमला, अगर मैं आपके पास में सवाल को लेके जाऊं, अगर आप बिकॉज यू वर्क on the ground level, what kind of problem actually you face when you go for these water conservation, water harvesting? Do you get support from the state or you find problems?
I prefer to stay away from the government machinery. We only deal with the farmers. Ours is a people's movement. We we align ourselves to the wishes of the farmer. We take their advice and have them in part of our decision making. And that is why 99.99% of my dams have been successful. Whereas, as Swami ji was saying, कि आजकल के जो नए engineers आकर के बना देते हैं, उनको ना उस जगह लोकेशन के बारे में कुछ खास मालूम होता है, नए नए यूनिवर्सिटी से पढ़ करके आते हैं, और वो ही अगर छोटे डैम्स भी बनाते हैं, जो चेक डैम्स मैं बनाती हूँ, तो मैंने देखा है कि अगर वो लोग 10 चेक डैम बनाएंगे तो उनमें से एक सक्सेसफुल होगा, या तो उसका मुंह रॉन्ग तरफ कर दिया, या उसके अंदर कमती स्ट्रेंथ का सीमेंट और स्ट्रक्चर बना दिया, या और कोई गलतियां कर दी, और या कहीं पर उसके कंस्ट्रक्शन में चूक रह गई और पानी सब बह करके निकलने लग गया। तो इस तरह की बहुत सी बातें होती हैं जब ग्रास रूट के ऊपर, जो कि देख करके मुझे इतनी पीड़ा होती है कि सरकार का इतना पैसा बेकार जा रहा है। हम लोग गांव वालों के साथ मिल करके करते हैं जैसे कि ये उनका काम हो, इसलिए हमारे बनाए हुए चेक डैम जो हैं, हमको भरोसा है कि वो जेनरेशंस तक कायम रहेंगे। फिर भी एक चेक डैम की एक उम्र होती है, और क्योंकि उसके बाद वहां पर भी सिल्टिंग हो जाती है, इसलिए हम लोग एनकरेज कर रहे हैं फार्मर्स को कि तुम लोग कम से कम 25% अपने अपने जमीन में पेड़ लगाओ, क्योंकि उन पेड़ों को लगाने से उनके कुओं में भरसक पानी रहेगा। चेक डैम करता क्या है, उतना सा पानी नहीं उनके लिए यूजफुल होता है जितना कि चेक डैम में भरता है। उससे जो कुएं भर जाते हैं, और ये कुएं हर एक के खेत में स्थित हैं, तो उसकी वजह से उनको डायरेक्ट खेती में फायदा हो जाता है। तो पेड़ों के माध्यम से भी यही होने वाला है। पहले जमाने में इतने चेक डैम नहीं थे, लेकिन पेड़ वो भरपाई करते थे जिससे कि उनके कुओं में हमेशा पानी रहता था। तो अब हमारे सरकार की पॉलिसीज प्रो ट्रीज की होनी चाहिए। तो फार्मर जो है, अगर वो हॉर्टिकल्चर अपने लैंड पर करता है तो 5 साल तक उसकी आमदनी कम होगी, तो 5 साल तक उसको थोड़ी सी सब्सिडी देनी होगी फार्मर को, लेकिन उसके जो पेड़ लगने से नदियों को फायदा होगा, उनके कुओं में फायदा होगा, वो और जो उसके सॉइल में फायदा होगा, उसको नापा नहीं जाता, इतना बड़ा फायदा होगा। तो हमको ये देखना है कि जो नदी के बहाव दोनों तरफ, उसके किनारों के दोनों तरफ जो फॉरेस्ट रेस्टोर करने हैं, वो फॉरेस्ट रेस्टोर करने में भी दिक्कत है, क्योंकि सरकार आफ्टर ऑल कितना संभाल सकती है। लेकिन अगर एक एक किसान को हम बोले कि तुम अपने अपने क्षेत्र में इतने इतने पेड़ लगा लो और सरकार की तरफ से इतना तुमको सब्सिडी मिलेगा 5 साल तक, फिर तुम्हारी जो आमदनी है वो आज जो आमदनी हो रही है उससे 10 गुना ज्यादा, 5 या 6 गुना ज्यादा हो जाएगी 5 साल में, और 10 गुना ज्यादा हो जाएगी 10 साल में। और इस बीच हमको मार्केटिंग की व्यवस्था, फलों के मार्केटिंग की व्यवस्था अच्छी करनी होगी, कोल्ड स्टोरेजेस बनाने होंगे जो कि वहां पर क्रॉप का नुकसान नहीं हो। तो ये पॉलिसीज मेरे ख्याल से दे आर ऑलरेडी ऑन पेपर एंड आई होप दे विल बी इम्प्लीमेंटेड। और वी शुड ऑल्सो हैव टिम्बर फॉरेस्ट, फ्यूएल फॉरेस्ट, कम से कम जड़ें कायम रहेंगी, तो लोग पेड़ लगाएंगे और जमीन का स्वास्थ्य अच्छा होगा।
Right.
One more I would like to add, that to solve the urban problem, as my colleague had very rightly said, why can't it be self-dependent? Why can't urban cities be self-dependent? I know that Bombay could have been self-dependent if we had encouraged roof water harvesting. What is there that the government is finding so difficult to enact a law where roof water harvesting becomes mandatory for all new as well as old societies? Why can't we do this? Why must we rob the water of the villages that are in the catchment areas of the lakes from where water comes to Bombay, and the villagers in that area are left high and dry? Is that fair to the villagers? Why can't Bombay become self-sufficient? Delhi's problem, 70% of Delhi's water consumption can be had by roof water harvesting. 30% of Bombay's water can be supplied by roof water harvesting. Because we have high-rise buildings, so the roof surface is not as much as it is in Delhi, where there are small houses and each one of them has, if they make provision, then the government and the municipality does not need to supply water to that extent. We have to move. Every single person has to become conscious and aware of the grave danger in which we are. After seeing the case of Chennai, where it has happened only because of human apathy, where we had no concern about water. We just considered, अरे कीचड़ हो रहा है, इसको यहाँ से हटाओ, इसको पक्का कर दो. But what about the water that we require to sustain our life, to generate new life forms?
Right, Abla, well said. There are issues. It is probably human apathy. It is also a crisis of policy and program front. Probably we are not proactive as a society. The government is not able to bring various departments together to sort out the issue of water crisis. There is so much of water and still there is no water for people. This is a question that the government and the civil society and other organizations,
Every single individual.
every single individual has said. Well, that is all the time that I have for today. Thank you very much, Rajan Panda, V.R. Raman, Amla, Ms. Amla, and Swami Shivanandji for joining us in this program. We will be back with you again with a particular topic, same time next week. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dhananjay. Thank you, Raman and others.
Thanks, everyone.
See you. Bye-bye. Good day.